Hey everybody, this is Jason Blaha, and this is the final part of the Monday Q&A. So let's get this started. How old were you when you started this all, and why? Yeah, as a lot of you know from my history, I've explained that I was very, very sick as a child. I was very active though due to martial arts training and other stuff early on, but I was very sick and underweight during a large portion of my childhood. When I got up into my teens, because I had such a voracious appetite and was so used to being skinny no matter what I ate due to my medical issues, I did get, I wouldn't say fat, but I was definitely maybe 5 or 10 pounds overweight through most of my teens. Over what's normal, but also I have wide shoulders and other things. But when I got to be about right at 18, I really started putting on a lot of weight. My appetite went up. I was eating tons of junk. It was not uncommon for me to, at 18 years old, to eat a large pizza from Pizza Hut every night for dinner and wash it down with a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper. Sometimes 7 nights a week. So I put on a lot of weight. I would say from 18 to 19, I probably went from about 190 pounds to about 270, 280. And then I got disgusted with myself and realized I was fat. I hated it, hated myself. And I decided to do something about it. I started eating better and I took up distance running. I started jogging, and it was really hard at something like 280 and out of shape to start running. So I just took it one day at a time. I got about 100 yards the first time I tried to run, got out of breath, was on the ground panting and sweating. But the next day I got about 200 yards. The day after that I got 300 yards, and eventually I got to 1 mile. And I ran every single day, and I got to where I was running 5 miles every morning, 7 days a week, first thing out of bed, while eating better. And I dropped from that down to 170 pounds in about 1 year, just by running, doing a few push-ups and crunches. Then I got into weight training, and that was pretty much it for me. When I turned 20 and I started lifting weights, that was my thing. I loved it. I never looked back. And some of you have seen me put up pictures of me still natty at like 22 to get an idea of where I was at. And I think most people were pretty shocked when I put up pictures of me at 22 at 190 before going on anything. But yeah, that's how I started it. It was purely because I hated how I looked. I didn't like being fat. And so I took up the running. And then I got into weightlifting after a year after losing that first 100 pounds. All right, next question. Are partial rack benches a decent substitute for board presses? No, they are not. There is a reason we use a board press for powerlifting to train rack out work and triceps. And it is because, one, it's a more natural movement, and two, it's a soft touch because you can press the bar into the board and drive up using the same technique you would use on a full range of motion bench. When you hit the pins, two things happen. One, you lose your tightness because it's a hard contact, so your technique will change. And your bar path might change slightly, and the way you set your back will change due to touching the pins. And two, that hard contact with the metal on metal puts a lot of jarring stress on your joints. So your elbows tend to get beat up, your shoulder joints tend to get beat up. So it's actually harder on your body. So it's not an acceptable substitute. And I'm not saying it's not a useful tool to use every now and then, but if you're doing it regularly, it's not going to give you the same carryover that the board press will. And it's going to be harder on your joints and ligaments. So I'm not an advocate of doing it with any degree of regularity. All right, last question for the week. Can single leg press help with strength gains, or is it more of a bodybuilding accessory? Kind of a difficult question to answer because it's going to depend on where your weak links are. Now, anything will make you stronger. A bicep curl makes you stronger. A side lateral makes you stronger. So any lift has a potential to give you strength. But is it always going to carry over into real world strength? Not always if you have another weak link in the chain that is limiting performance. So if, for example, on your squats or your deadlifts, if your legs are the weak link at some point in the range of motion, then it could increase performance a little bit, and it might increase in performance over on the athletic field. Or particularly if you have a unilateral strength imbalance, because it's doing one leg at a time, so one of your legs is slightly stronger than the other, it may balance that back out, and it might give you a little more overall performance as a result. So yeah, it can be useful as a tool, but only if there is a weak link somewhere that needs to be strengthened. Now, I would see something like a one-leg leg press would be something you might do if you're worried about individual leg strength as a finishing movement after you do your heavy squats. would be the place to place them if you're concerned with using them as an accessory. But overall, for most people, it's going to be more of a bodybuilding movement, as not everyone is necessarily going to have that weakness. And again, that weakness could still oftentimes be overcome just by doing more squats. So again, tricky to answer when we get into accessory work versus primary movements for adding strength. It just depends on where your weaknesses are as an individual at any given time. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you next time. Let me give you guys a bicep shot first.